It was not too long ago that my 6-year-old handed me a note card and said, "Here's a credit card. That means you won." I looked over at my husband and we just gave each other some blank stares. Realizing that I have some work to do already at such a young age of 6 was a little bit shocking for me, but I guess I shouldn't be too shocked given that our kids are around and hear about money all the time and they're picking up on these like subtle interactions that they are witnessing. So of course, he's internally processing all of these messages and deciding what money actually means. So if you are kind of wondering, like, okay, well, when is a good time to start having these conversations? How do I make them age appropriate? What maybe are some simple ways that I can start teaching some good money habits or financial principles to my kids? So in the 3 to 5 age range, this is more so where you're talking a lot about like wants versus needs. And you're more so like introducing money principles at this age than you are like teaching money lessons, want versus need, as well as also understanding the difference of value and scarcity. Value and scarcity concepts don't necessarily need to be discussed so your 3 or 5-year-old can be able to give a definition, but we'll talk on exactly what I mean here in a second. So with the wants versus needs, typically how that kind of happens and plays out in my home is like we talk a lot about like when they want something or when they see something, they automatically kind of default to like, oh, I need this toy, or I need a piece of cake for dessert, or I need to watch a movie. And when I hear them use that language, I usually try and take, a moment, which doesn't happen perfectly every single time. No, you don't need that. You want that. Now, we do have several conversations, around this age range of like, what is a need? You need food, you need water, you need shelter, but you don't need a piece of cake. You don't need ice cream after every meal. You don't need that toy. Also give them language that helps them communicate in the way that I think that they should respond and communicate what their wants are appropriately. For example, I would like to have this toy for my birthday, or I would like to have this toy for Christmas. Asking and communicating what their desires are without giving them the terminology that it then becomes like entitlement, right? Because when you say, I want X, Y, or Z, when you say those words in that pattern, it's creating a sense of entitlement. So teaching them the difference between you may need food, water, and shelter, but you want a piece of cake. I would like to have a piece of cake for dessert. These are big kind of like concepts that's going to take a lot of time more so to like help them understand and grasp and fully comprehend. And let me just say, like my 7-year-old, we are still working on some of these terms and aspects. So it doesn't just completely, fully get grasped within this age range. This is something that you're probably going to continue teaching and applying and enforcing over their lifespan, at least as far as I've experienced so far as a mom. This would be also a really great opportunity to start introducing to them what actual physical money is, like coins and dollar bills. Now, even though I personally use my debit card or my credit card mostly during my normal shopping interactions, but having them just like physically handle change and cash at this age is a really good introduction. So at this stage, like I have this huge coin jar and it's pretty full with quite a few coins. And so what I would do sometimes is just like a pastime for them is I would pour the jar out on the table so there's coins everywhere. Their task would be to pick up the coins and put them back in the jar. They're seeing that some are, different shapes and sizes and, stacking them all up and counting them. It's just giving them this concept, different values associated with these, like why are some larger? Why are some smaller? Why do they look different? And you can start having these conversations if they're age appropriate for your child to understand and grasp, or you can just have them just as an introduction to what that means. Like this dollar bill has a 1 on it, whereas this bill over here has a 5 on it. Well, 5 is much greater than 1. This means that this equates to more money. Now, when you're getting to the point where you're starting to indicate like scarcity and value, it's a little bit of a harder concept for your kids to grasp, but they don't understand this unless you teach it to them. Everything has a value to it, and some people value other things over, certain things over other things. And when you make a purchase, then you're indicating certain values tied to that purchase. Now, I know this is a huge concept to grasp and trying to like explain this to your kids. So here's an everyday real example of that. So when they're walking into the store and they see a toy that they want, okay, that doesn't mean that they're going to walk out of the store with that toy. And if you set the expectation that every time you go shopping, they're walking away with a toy, they're not understanding the concept of scarcity. And when there is no scarcity, there is a lack of value. They're not going to value that toy quite as much because they're getting a toy so often. Things that you receive, when you receive them, you value them more because you're not getting new things every single day. You're not getting new things every single time you're going shopping. I don't get everything I want every single time. So then there's some scarcity, there's some length there to the time that they have to wait and have this delayed gratification till they're receiving something that they actually value. When we would receive a cash gift, we would just put it aside for like a college or their savings account. But now that they're getting a little bit older, money is now starting to mean something different to them. So my eldest son is starting to lose his teeth, and when he's losing his teeth, he does get a little monetary reward. When I was a kid, it was 50 cents. You can let me know if your kids earn more money than that when they lose their teeth. And so my son has been setting aside the money that he's received from the teeth that he has lost. And so this is his first experience actually seeing and like saving his money that he specifically has, because anytime that he's received money in the past, he was too young to fully grasp the concept of what it meant. He's starting to get excited because he knows, okay, this money means that I'm able to buy something at the store. Now, at this point, we're not tying chores to an allowance, and we might not ever choose to do that. That's a conversation for another day. But since he's not earning an allowance through, doing chores and having this regular interaction with money, I know he's already going to get a ton of, candy for Easter. We always end up with way too much. And then that means that I'm the one that mostly eats it all by myself because it's just sitting there. I mean, I can't let my kids fill up on sugar. I'm like, they don't need this much, so maybe I'll eat it. And then I end up eating most of it. My husband too, like he is a willing participant in helping me make sure they don't get too much sugar in them. And so this year I was like, you know what? I would really love to use the Easter egg hunt in a different way. So instead of putting candy inside of the Easter eggs, what we did is we set out 24 Easter eggs for each of my sons, and we put quarters in each of the eggs. So that ended up equating to $6. I'll do the math for you. So after they found the Easter eggs, and they were a little bit confused at first as to why their Easter eggs didn't have candy, they suddenly became really excited. Once they had counted out all of their quarters, they, piled them and counted them out into 4, which gave them an interaction of actually like determining, okay, these 4 quarters equal $1. Then they exchanged their quarters into dollars. So that was super fun for them. And we immediately had them put the money in their pockets, and then we took them to the store. Now, at this point, it was a little bit more challenging directing them through the store as far as like, okay, you have $6 in your pocket. This is what you can buy with your $6. No, this is too much. What can they buy? What can't they buy? Evaluating what the actual sticker price was for each of the toys. They both needed a little bit of coaching, a little bit of guidance. Well, my youngest ended up choosing 2 snakes and a dinosaur. So they were about $1 and change each. He was so excited with the toys that he brought home. And when he went to pay for his purchases, he had a little bit of change. He was able to put his extra change into his bank for a future purchase. Now, my 7-year-old, he could not find any toy that he particularly wanted or liked with the money that he had available. So what he ended up finding was a $10 Lego 3-in-1 like creator kit. He's super into Legos. He's super into building right now. But the problem was, since he didn't have enough money, I had a conversation with him where I was like, okay, you can borrow $3 from mommy and daddy and then make this purchase if that's what you choose to do. And you can take the money out of your bank that you had for your teeth that you had lost. And so that's the choice that he ended up making. So once we got home and he had made his purchase, we actually counted out the additional money that he had in his bank to equate to the money that he didn't have at the store. He did not have quite enough. I actually had him write out an IOU note and then put that in his piggy bank. So it ended up turning into a little bit more of an experience for his purchase that he selected. He's now buying money on credit and going through the experience of a loan and then actually repaying the loan later. And this is not, of course, the, routine. This is not the norm that I want him to get into where, he's thinking okay, well, I don't have enough money. I'll just buy it on a credit card. I'll pay it off later, right? I don't want him facilitating this is a natural progression of how you purchase things. But I do think that it's super important for him to understand these concepts in a way that he's making this decision at such a young age. So that way, when he gets older, he understands the concept of what is a credit, what is a loan, what does that actually mean for me? Is what I'm purchasing worth purchasing now for what I'm actually going to be able to accomplish, even though that means that I'm taking out a credit or, taking out a loan to make a purchase today, right? There are just going to be aspects of your life where you are going to have a loan. You're going to have that interaction where you're going to have to make those decisions. And this was something that I did not initially expect with this whole interaction with him. I was thinking okay, I would gravitate him towards a toy that was completely within his price range, but I'm actually really happy with the route that it ended up at because the toy that he selected was actually a really great toy for the price range. He chose something that I knew he would enjoy. A 3-in-1 gives him 3 options rather than just one build. He's going to have several different experiences with this toy. He's buying a quality toy over something super cheap, and he's having this experience of counting out money that he owes and understanding once he actually got the money from his birthday and then had to then give it back because it's money that he owed us for the purchase. He had that whole experience of excitement for receiving money and then just disappointment, which was oh, this is the money that I have to pay mom and dad back with, realizing okay, I can't just take this money and spend it because it's been already allocated from a decision I had already made. So I think that these are really good age-appropriate activities that you could choose to implement. I think it's never too early to start having these conversations with your kids. And I'm interested to hear how your parents taught you. When did you start learning about money? Really, it doesn't matter how you choose to implement these principles or these lessons with your kids. The most important part is that you're taking the time to actually teach them and direct them through these concepts that they fully understand and grasp what this all means. What does it mean if you go into debt? What does it mean, when you take out a loan? Would I prefer that my son never go into debt and never have, be taking out a loan? Of course. It would be amazing if he could buy his own house and buy his car and, get through college without debt. But the likelihood is that may not ever happen. And so he needs to understand what these principles are now from such a young age. So that way, when he gets to the point where he's ready to make these decisions, he already has some of this knowledge to latch onto and fully understand what that means for him. I also don't want to lose sight of how important it is to help our kids understand the saving and delayed gratification in this stage as well. And for their first really cash interaction, I wanted them to have that full complete experience of getting money, spending money, and then the payoff of purchasing something within a really short window. But another thing that I really want to make sure we're really super intentional about as their parents is the idea of saving and delayed gratification, which that's just going to kind of come with time anyway. And no, as soon as they get cash, we're not rushing them to the store for them to pick something out, right? They're going to naturally have some of this saving, delayed gratification built into, just the normal aspect of of receiving money and buying things and just living, that I don't have to be super concerned about making sure that I set up these certain scenarios for them to experience. I would love to continue this conversation in the comments, but if you're also in the situation where your kids are starting to ask a lot more for toys that are too expensive, then you might enjoy this episode next, where I talk about a similar situation that I had with one of my sons, and I think you will appreciate what we discussed there. So I'll link up that episode for you next.